Now I'm just sure.
I have that it was Zaddy as the chair
Patty wasn't there.
and Rocky placed as the vice chair
Last year.
last year.
Oh, okay.
I don't need it.
You are until someone else has voted in. Okay. Then I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody that's here, all of our budget committee members and school board members that are here. First thing on the agenda is the election of budget committee officers for the 2024-25 school year. First up is the office of chair. Do I have any nominations?
As far as I'm concerned, you got the gavel, go for it.
She has a board now. So.
Yeah, I can't now.
Huh?
We'll give it to you though.
That's
You were
it.
vice chair.
I know, you're vice chair, so that you would move up into that position.
Is that right?
Does anyone want to nominate?
What?
I'll nominate Rocky.
Okay. Nominated.
Experience, yes. Usually it's the guy that isn't here that
Chair, are there any other objections? I mean, are there any other nominations? Okay, by acclamation, I think we have a chair, don't we?
Yep. yep, we
Thank
did.
you.
Yeah.
And now you get the gavel.
Do you have an agenda?
So we need to have a buddy.
I have some.
Okay.
Here we go.
Let's make it official.
No, it's amazing. Okay, we need to elect a vice chair. Any nominations?
Everybody's looking down.
You don't have to do any of lying on the side out.
I will nominate to Alan.
I'll second that.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, the next thing on the agenda is the budget message from our interim superintendent, Brian.
In writing this budget message, I found myself struggling for the words to communicate to a community that I feel that needs to hear more than this is the money that now we're spending. Coos Bay has some challenges ahead, but none that cannot be overcome. We will grow in innovation, quality of education, staff retention, community partnerships, fiscal responsibility, fiscal transparency, school culture, and communication. Coos Bay has the resources and desire to be one of the best school districts in the state. And I believe with the talented new superintendent that can be Coos Bay's truth. In putting this budget together, I asked myself 3 questions. What is the impact on learners in classroom instruction? How does this decision impact school board goals? And do people have the tools that they need to accomplish the job that we've asked them to do? What this budget does, it adds additional behavioral support at the K-6 level. It increases special education support, increases intervention support, adds a new teaching position at the high school to meet the new state graduation requirements for personal finance. A lot of people wait for that one to come back. Provides summer school K-12 this summer, provides staffing levels to meet the class size goals of the district, provides additional leadership for Little Pirates, and leverages early childhood grants to add capacity to serve all students. Supports the school board's goals and maintains our commitment to serve all learners. There are a lot of good things happening in Coos Bay, and this budget supports the continuation of that work. The budget gives the board and the administration the flexibility to continue to evaluate its current program and move forward in a responsible manner. I do believe that Coos Bay will need to work on developing budgets over the next couple of years that are reflective of a unified district vision and are disciplined by that vision. I encourage a 3 to 5 year view of finance rather than a 1-year budget. Taking a longer term view will give you the ability to right size the district over time while addressing urgent needs of your learners today. I submit to you a balanced budget for your review.
Thanks, John. Now, who we've all come here for, we're gonna, and Marina,
Right.
that's I'm saying it right.
Yes, you are.
So we're gonna let you give us the budget overview, which I'm assuming is all this stuff that's in here, all these figures.
You lucky ducks are gonna go page by page. It's 206 to be exact.
So as she goes through this, I would encourage any questions rather than waiting until the end and then you forget what the question was about. That's fair?
That is fair.
Okay, so go ahead, you get started.
Wonderful. So if you can look at the screen, I have put together a PowerPoint presentation to go over the summarized view of this budget because 206 pages is quite a lot of detail to go page by page. So if you scroll down for me, David, we can skip this part. The agenda, we started on it already. So the role of the budget committee tonight is to review and approve the budget document as we presented, and then to hopefully approve that budget so it moves to the board hearing and hopefully gets adopted in June at the June board meeting. If not, we will have a follow-up budget committee meeting next Wednesday. Next page. Yeah.
Just one clarifying point too, the budget committee has authority at the function level. And I'm sure you'll touch bases on what exactly that
Yeah.
means.
Yes, so tonight I have given you quite a ton of detail, function, by object. I want you to have all of the detail, but in reality, what we are approving is the fund, major fund by major function. So we have 4 major funds. They're the debt service, capital projects, special revenues, and then also the general fund, which is our largest. We approve and adopt a budget at the major function level. So when adopting and approving the budget, we combine all 1,000 functions for instruction to one level. That's how ODE prefers to be budget, and it does give us appropriation authority throughout the year as things come up in total by function. So the first thing we consider when building the budget is state budget implications, as this is our largest source of revenue. We're in the second year of a state school biennium of 10.2 billion. The first year, the current year that we're in, is a 49% split. So next year we'll be going in with a 51%, which is approximately 1.95 million of an increase in our state school fund budget. Statewide, however, enrollment is down since COVID-19, and we are also seeing that at the local levels. So while our funding per student will go up, we are in reality seeing less students statewide and locally. We did a Grow data analysis, which projects our enrollment over the next 10 years. They do project over the next 10 years through 2034, we'll see approximately a 300 student decline, which is approximately 10%. So as Brian mentioned in the budget message, we are really looking at a finance view and how we can right size the district as enrollment continues to decline, and our funding likely will be consistent with that funding. This year, we also had a significant increase in the state investment account due to higher than predicted corporate activity tax receipts. And we also see a little bit of a decrease in the high school success allocation because of our local enrollment being down. We also see strong advocacy at the K-12 level in legislature, and also we see strong, huge, unprecedented reserves at the state budget level, and we're hoping that comes forward to the districts when we look at the next biennium. Another implication when we're looking at budgets is enrollment. So what I've put together is student enrollment as of September 30th since 2015. It gives us a good 10-year gap, 10-year average of where students are. You'll see we had about 150 increase in 2016. I could not come up with why, but what I can tell you is that huge decrease, that's due to COVID, and we are slowly inching back up from that, but we are not at pre-COVID numbers and are not expected to get back to pre-COVID numbers, 2019 numbers. So general fund just, this is all summary, so if you have questions, please let me know and I'm happy to stop. This is, a summary of our general fund revenues. So we budget by major source of revenues. That would be local, intermediate, state, and federal sources. So the graph on the left is our 23-24 adopted revenues. And then on the right side is our proposed revenues that we're bringing here tonight. You'll see in proportionality, everything's relatively consistent. The one decrease is that as projected in the budget last year, we did eat about $1 million in our ending fund balance. And we are expecting to end this fiscal year at about 5 million, which is lower than our 6.5 beginning fund balance at the beginning of the year. Other than that, proportionally, everything stays relatively consistent. And then on to expenditures. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, chime in if you do, because I don't love public speaking, so I'll just keep going. So on to general fund requirements. This is how we budget by major function. I have grouped everything into instruction, support services, other uses, which is transfers and debt payments, and then contingency. You can see from this adopted 23-24 compared to the 24-25 that our instruction is a higher percentage than our percentage last year. This is primarily due to, we had about 8 staff members who were funded out of ESSER 3 this fiscal year. They were in the budget last year under Fund 213. They're now being absorbed into Fund 100, which is why a larger portion is instructional, because that's where our teachers live.
Just to give you guys an outside view of this, it's really impressive to me how much money is going into the classroom. You know, almost to the point of, do we have enough support? But it's, most districts struggle to do 50-50 on that. And you're well over, you're 52% of the money that's actually going into the building. In direct instruction. And so that's really good.
That also includes the new positions you talked about in the budget message.
Yeah.
So the new paraprofessionals, the new teacher for
Yeah.
Financial literacy.
financial literacy. So all of those are in that 52%.
Yes.
Yes, some of them are in SIA, but our proportions still stay the same. Yes. And I'm sorry, the colors are atrocious, but this was the only options. It was like shades of brown or shades of blue or a combo of both. And it was a little easier to see them by both. Now on, that is how we budget, is by major function. So those are the line items that would go to ODE. But I also wanted to show that by object, because I think that's really helpful to not just see what's going into instruction, because we do pay for some teachers and some support staff out of 2,000 functions. So what I have here is the general fund by objects. That rather large light blue section is all of our salaries and benefits. For 23-24, we're looking at about 60.49% of our spending is all in salaries and benefits. With that, there's a caveat. The dark blue section, that's 23.58% this year, proposed for next year, is it's our purchase services, which theoretically is not staffing, but because we allow and have the South Coast ESD run our life skills program, that large, huge cost is the life skills program and staffing. That if we didn't operate through an ESD, it would have to be staffed or be managed.
So the light blue, does that include our PERS and our future PERS obligations?
It just includes first for this year.
This year.
Mhm. So when you, I wish.
Nobody can include.
I wish.
They're on the unfunded portion.
We'll work on that reserve fund.
That only exists on a report.
Thank you. So with that said, 23-24, when we include salaries, benefits, and our purchase services, is 85.4% of our budget. It is the largest chunk of money that we spend is on our staff and their benefits. We have a lot of money in instruction, both we also have a lot of money in other functions that go to support staff. The next column. Oh, perfect. We're on to, did anyone have any questions on the general fund?
No, I have a question on the budget overall for all weeks.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I just want to know, has this budget gone up or down? And what's the percent of increase or decrease over last year's budget?
It's gone up by 748,000, which was about 1%. Mhm. And in total, it is a larger chunk of our general fund. I'd say about 4. On special revenues. Special revenues is a huge chunk of your budget document that I have given in excruciating detail, fund by fund, but we wrap it all up to be one special revenue fund. And here we have primarily staff from SIA and Measure 98 funds. That's our high school success. We have student body accounts. We have food service, and we also have all of our state and local grants. This fund did go down significantly, and that is due to ESSER being gone by September 30th. We had about $10 million budgeted in ESSER for this current year, and we're only budgeting 5 or 3 for next year. So we see a rather large decrease in this, offset by a smaller but good chunk of SIA dollars.
So ESSER funds have to be spent by September 30th.
Correct. That's September 30th.
So about 3 million and has to be spent. early.
That is correct. The 3 million is a allocation budget for me so that if our HVAC project goes any longer than anticipated, I have long enough and authority to spend it into next fiscal year. We have spent all but about 3.5, and it's projected to be done in July. I'm gonna guess maybe closer to August, but I want the ability to spend it.
School start.
Exactly. So every dollar of ESSER 3 will be spent. I will make sure of it by September 30th, but I wanted to give us that room to be able to send it into next school year. Yeah, so you can actually stay on the screen for a sec. This is the special revenues by function. So you'll see even in this, the largest chunk of money that we spend this year and next year is in instruction. We put most of our money into the classrooms. SIA has a significant chunk of teachers. It has a significant group of educational assistants. Our Title I grant is also included in here, which is educational assistants primarily that go into elementary schools. We spend a lot of money in supporting students in the classroom out of the special revenue funds. You'll see the biggest change in that kind of gray, dark gray. That is our facilities acquisition function, which is because we don't have as many ESSER dollars. It decreased by about $4 million. The application did. On to the next.
So
Yeah.
in that, so one of those things, the money we set aside to redo the field in the future, and all that kind of stuff, is that all in there?
That is in the capital projects. Mhm. Which is pretty empty since we just bought a new field. Well, we'll work on that transfer. The next set of funds is the debt service funds. This one is pretty straight to the point, so that's why you have a little different of a graph. Last year we budgeted right about that. Not see that. I'm sorry. You guys might have better eyes than me, but let me so I give you exact numbers. We budgeted about 5 million last year, and we're going to budget about 5.2 million. We go purely off the debt schedules for this. So this is how we came up with these funds. The light blue is the principal payments, where the dark blue is the interest.
These are from the bond payment?
The bond, yes, the bond, and then there's a PERS obligation bond that we have as well. Yep, that's in here as well.
That's one, are we getting close to the end of that one?
I believe so, yes, but that is actually not any, we don't levy any taxes for that. That is purely, we book a percentage of all of our salaries and then move it over and pay that debt for him.
So will that leave money at some point that will be freed up? Or will
Yes. Yeah, it will be a percentage that I'm not charging the district for all staff. Mhm. And then on to capital projects. As Arnie mentioned, we have quite a few capital projects. We have an athletic projects. We have a general capital projects. We have an athletic reserve. And we also have an ongoing bond fund, which is nearly spent out. So if you were looking at your budget document, you saw a fund, I think it's 463 off the top of my head, significantly lower in allocation. That is because we've spent all of our bond funds. We are finishing up Milcoma, the last hurrah of that bond. They added the 2 new classrooms, they fixed the roof, and they are doing some light renovations inside. And they're all coming out of bond funds. So those are nearly done. So that is why we went from a huge dark chunk under facilities acquisition on 23 adopted requirements, and we no longer have that for next year because we are not intending to do any huge scale capital projects like we've done for the last 5 to 6 years.
So for a roof, right?
That's my hope. But that will likely be next budget year by the time we get
Bigger
roofers
budget.
scheduled.
Bigger buckets then.
Sure, and I do have enough, knowing that sunset, she's addressing the sunset roof. We are currently working on some strategic grants to get that handled. And if not, I have included enough allocation in the capital projects fund to do that if absolutely necessary this fiscal year. And if we could even get a roofer in time. So that is on our list. We want kids to not have buckets in their classrooms. So some of our major changes, just so rather than go function by function and address each major change as they happen, I thought it would be easiest to give you a summary and then I can address you back to where those are. That would be easier for you. So staffing major changes. We did absorb 3 FTE of teaching staff due to enrollment reductions at the K2 specifically. Eastside and Madison have had significantly declining numbers. And when looking at recommended class sizes in the teacher's agreement, we really got onto a very specific calculation as to how many staff we could have to support the students. And what it resulted to is we could reasonably maintain the correct appropriate staffing levels with 2 less staff, 1 at each Madison and Sunset. And then we also had that happen at Milcoma. They're going to have a really small 3rd grade class, and it wasn't necessary to have a 5th teacher when one is already leaving. So through attrition, we absorbed 3.
Actually, everyone seems like that.
Yeah, we did add one at Sunset. He's a little more positive than me. I want to be realistic. And then we
And
did,
those 3 teachers have all been told they're no longer.
yeah,
all that.
They retired or left. This is attrition. There were no risks.
there were no risks. So as teaching positions came up with resignations or retirements, that's when we were critically looking at the staffing roles. We did absorb the staff that were funded out of ESSER 3 this year and moved them into general fund for next year. We added 6 educational assistant positions to increase in-school support. I believe some of them have already been hired or interviewed to work at Sunset for some behavioral needs. Those are all funded out of SIA. We have a significant chunk of money to spend in SIA. That grant just keeps going higher and higher and higher, and we need consistent ways of spending it. Where the last couple of years we've been like, what's a one-time expense that we can do to spend it down? We're really looking at how to benefit the kids the best, which is adding staff to support them daily. As Superintendent Gardner mentioned, we did add 1 FTE at the high school level for business/social services, personal finance, which does allow us to offer additional classes to meet the new graduation requirement. When talking with admin, our building principals, one of the biggest struggles that they're having is that they have half-time vice principals or assistant principal. And it was a really big priority to them that we add 2 more vice principals. So each K6 building has a designated full-time assistant principal, which we have posted for and are interviewing for. This is funded out of SIA. So our current assistant principals are already funded out of SIA. It fit the budget, it fit the needs. But again, where can we show the most support to our buildings? This was felt to be the most beneficial by the building principals as well as the district office. The other shuffle that you will see is Lisa DeSalvio is retiring. And we had hired Kayla Crook, who is currently our alt ed administrator, to take over for special programs. So with that, there was a lot of discussion, what would be best for the alt ed students. Kayla has built this really great program, how can she stay involved still? And so rather than replace Kayla with another administrator, we are replacing that position with Tosa, a teacher on special assignment, so that there's a body in alt ed, but the Kayla can still be really heavily involved as the administrator. And then we have also added 1.0 FTE of an administrator at the district office. This is a director of early childhood education and a coordinator of student services, which will be funded half-time out of the Preschool Promise Grant. We have an administrator who is already running early childhood, the Preschool Promise, but they've never been on our camp at the district office before. So we're moving them up here so they can spend a good chunk of their time really growing that program. And we can pay for their services half-time out of Preschool Promise.
Question. Okay, so our alt ed administrator, who's gonna be in TOSA. Are they in charge of all programs then?
No, they would just be in charge of Destiny. Mhm.
In the online. But they wouldn't be in charge of the preschool anymore.
Right.
Kayla was kind of a unicorn that could actually do both, right? And moving her over to special ed, and there's a few other programs she's gonna be responsible for. But Lisa had been doing it for so long, you know, she started out as a special ed director. And then things added over the years. And I was very concerned with overwhelming Kayla the first year with so many different programs, you know, including Title I and such. I really wanted her to focus on special ed because it needs attention, right? So and Harley has been doing all of the administrative and grant work for early childhood for the last 3 years. And we've never used that to pay for, you know, we gave her a little stipend, but we could use it to pay a significant chunk of her salary. So the idea was to bring her here where she's in close proximity and gets to have that contact with that program, as well as absorb some of the things that Lisa was doing that we think may be too much for Kayla at this point.
For
And
that position.
for that position. Yeah, so, that portion of her job, she will be working with Chet. So I'm kind of giving them some flexibility to, you know, to move around what makes sense for them, but also she will actually be supervised by Chad, so when it comes time for evaluations and things, there won't be any conflicts.
Mhm.
You know, but so essentially, I haven't actually, I know you've probably penciled, but I don't think we're spending any more money on district office administration than we were this year.
We are not.
You know, we're just spending it differently and we're picking up the body. of the process.
And we'll hire a new principal then for Madison?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is already in progress.
Teacher on special.
Well, and I also want to add on the vice principals. What we want them to do, and we've already asked Kara to kind of run a learning community with the new vice principals, if you will, is to really work on the process for our whole intervention system, both academically and behaviorally, and get consistent across the whole district on how that's run and how it's done, and have an administrator in every building that's responsible for those systems being fully implemented. Right? A lot of the problems that we're having this year in the behavioral cycle is just a breakdown in systems. You know, we're not doing what we used to do.
So is that the logic behind hiring having two half-time?
No, they're not hiring.
We're not hiring half-time.
You're gonna make them full-time?
We're gonna,
Perfect.
so everybody we have is already full-time, they're currently split between campuses. Next year, we'll add 2 more, and so each building, Millicoma, Sunset, they'll each have their own, Madison and Eastside will each have their.
Yeah. Because when you do that split, they think, oh, you have a half an FTE. Not really, right? Because you're bouncing back and forth, you're losing efficiencies in that process. You're not where you're supposed to, you're not where you needed at the time, because you're gonna just miss. I look at it and it's like, okay, you got a 0.5, but you're really getting the results of a 0.3, right? It's hard to split an administrator between buildings.
Mhm.
you
Put
know?
that on their employee evaluation. Really give them 0.3 after.
Well, I mean, then realistically, I couldn't expect any more. If you really get down to it. So I think that this will really help kind of supercharge the system. And also, and I think Kayla understands those systems probably as good or better than most people in the district. And giving her a little bit more responsibility to do that. I think it'll work well.
Can you tell me, I mean, I know historically we've had a hard time getting subs. A lot of the administrative team that's filled in those roles. And, I mean, I get a little concerned are we, I assume that a lot of the administrators are doing that. Can you do that?
I'd like to just get subs instead.
I know, ideally,
We,
Because that's an expensive sub.
it is.
yeah, we've had a pretty good turnout for subs this year. With that, we have a lot of classified staff who are subbing for certified positions.
Right.
And that is what I've seen that the building principals are doing more often than pulling in an administrator is, for example, they have a PE assistant who can run a 7th class. But the one, I think he's Eastside, I think he's often out of his position to sub. So that leaves a hole somewhere, but it is not leaving a gap in the teaching position as often as it has been.
I just know historically, the administrators have filled in at times. Significant.
That's every word, but yeah, it's, we were talking before the meeting, Coos Bay's problems are really not financial. They're trying to find quality people and, we budgeted for 6, EAs. We've gone through, 10 or 12 applications this spring. We've hired 2. And we're struggling to hire more. And the reality is you probably need 12. You budget for them. The question is finding them. And so I would encourage the board and the new superintendent to have some discussions to figure out how to incentivize those positions a little bit more to try to figure out how to get folks. Because if you're doing interventions, both behavioral, title, and non-title academic, you really don't have enough bodies. And then there's some other things about the contract that need to be worked on, but that's not for a budget meeting.
Something else that we did include in this budget for staffing is that we increased all EAs from 0.821 FTE to a 0.875. That allows them to be, it sounds like a small amount, but it allows them to be at the district 1.5 hours a week more, which is allowing them to get there before the students by a few minutes and communicate with teachers, build plans, and then also be available after school. Right now, they're getting there about the same time as the kids and about the same time as students. So it's really hard challenges in communicating with the teachers and building those structures.
It really lowers their effectiveness. So we're just giving them a little bit more time to actually talk with the teacher before the class starts.
And we are currently we are paying benefits as if everyone is already working a 0.875 for the contract. So this allows us to pay the little bit extra for the 1.5 hours, not pay anything additional for the benefits, and get a significantly better result in the classrooms. So with all of that administrator changes, we are actually reducing FTE of administrators by 0.5. Because we're not absorbing alt ed, we're gonna fill a TOSA with that, but that doesn't add a position. And moving 0.5 of Parley to preschool promise does allow us to have some extra room in the general fund budget. More bang for the buck. Other changes and considerations, factors in the budget is that I did make revisions to appropriations for the new contracts that we've had. We have a new food service management contract. They were up for bid this year. We're still using Sodexo, but their fee went up about 10%. And then we also have new auditors. Our auditors retired. We went up for bid. We have new auditors. It's not a significant chunk more, but it is just a different fee. So if you see a decrease in that, that's why. I've also increased the transfer budget from 1.8 million to 1.9 million. Most of that difference is going to building a reserve for replacing bleachers at the main gym at the high school. They're a potential safety risk, and that is a huge priority for the district to replace those. They don't make what we have anymore, so we can just get them repaired. So we're building a reserve similar to what we did for the church. For bleachers, so that when we do have time to replace those, we have built the funds to do that. You will also see a significant increase in the SIA allocation in the budget, Fund 224. It is significantly increased, and that is because historically we've spent consistently the same amount of money, always allowing for a carryover after June to be spent before September 30th. There's a new legislature saying you cannot spend your money after June 30th. It has to be spent down. So they didn't tell us that in time to spend down all of this year's allocation. So we're allowed to carry over this year's. So we have this year's carryover plus the entirety of next year's allocation that we have to spend by June 30th of 2025. We have some really big plans for that. We've added 6 additional EAs. We've added increased time. We are also going to be implementing, it's not voluntary, the training in June and August, non-voluntary classified training, which is going to be a week of behavioral training for educational assistants and any other classified employees. It's an extra week of pay. There will be a stipend if they complete the items required, and it will allow us to have better trained staff in our schools and hopefully stopping the cycle of behaviors that are currently happening. The other item is just our ESSER 3 funds that Arnie and I have already addressed, but they need to be spent by September 30th. So the funding allocation is significantly lower in the proposed budget, but I don't believe we'll even be spending 3 million. I just need to have room to spend that if our invoices from the contractors came late, or if the HVAC project came in somehow under budget and we needed to spend all of that in other ways. I wanted to make sure we had that ability too. Next budget discussions and questions. That's it for my summary and my beautiful blue graphs, but I am happy to talk about anything. Yes.
So we got a lot in this budget. What did we give up to get it?
The 3 teachers.
Where did it go down? Like, where did our
Support services.
support services?
Instruction went up. Support services did go down about $1 million, and that was just critically reviewing where we had budgeted before. And looking at historical trends and current trends of actual spending. So it was just really business services. Do I actually spend as much money on hardware? Well, I don't. There was a budget built in for all of those things, and there was a lot that had been built in continually to stay the same. And so I really analyzed, do we need that $100,000 line, or is it something we continually pay for out of tech? And that was happening a lot where things were getting included a couple of times. Tech pays for support for a software, but I was also having software in my budget. And so I was just looking at each of those pieces line by line.
Yeah, because I noticed a number of things that had gotten zeroed out, and
Well, I need to have a caveat for the proposed budget, and the adopted budget for 23-24. So last year, as you guys all may remember, I don't know, you don't look at it all year like I do, but the budget document was laid out vastly different than how you have it. It was all of the revenues and then all of the expenditures. And it only had by function detail. So it didn't give you a really lot of detail as to what's in 1111. It didn't give you that. But I needed to have that because that's the way my brain works. That's the way I think the budget should look and makes the most sense. So what I had to do is, and that's why you all got it the Friday before the budget committee meeting and not the week before. Is I had to rebuild the 23-24 budget, in our current year. But with that being, I just needed to get a budget in. So the budget under the adopted budget column does match by function as to what you adopted. But as for the objects, I was, purely just trying to balance the budget. So if you're like, oh, that has $20,000 in it, but she put a 0. That's because when I went back and looked, it didn't mean $20,000. I was just trying to get the budget to balance for 23-24.
Right.
So
And so you may move those funds around within the function later on.
exactly,
Well, you had the software breakdown, so when Marina came in, she had this budget that was all set up by function. There was no budget in our software because our software was locked down. But so we started working on that in January, right?
correct.
And got that unlocked. She had to recreate this year's budget, and in some cases have to guess where, the objects were in order to get a provisional database to make this proposed budget, I want, because she won't brag about it, but I'm gonna brag on it, okay? She walks in, there's no budget that's in an accounting software that you could actually manage. Right? The software's locked in. We get it opened up. Oh yeah, by the way, she's never worked on this software before. Okay, so we did get somebody to help her a little bit,
Thank goodness.
to walk her through some program stuff. But in the last 4 months, she rebuilt last year. And then we worked together to build this budget for this next year.
Oh, and don't forget that audit.
And we had an audit in the middle of it, right?
Yeah, God, you're right. They fill it out.
And she's on her 3rd or 4th superintendent. And,
It's been a fun year.
and it,
And her dog died.
That's not true, but I do have a 2-year-old home. I feel like that's way worse.
yeah. And I'm encouraging her that over the next few years that I think you'll see some increased detail, break out by building and that sort of thing, because it's the more detail you have in the budget, the better you can manage the budget going forward. But what she has accomplished in the last 4 months is Herculean. It's absolutely Herculean.
And that's what we're gonna see now.
Yeah.
That's what, that's right here. And,
Let's keep the show.
well, and I'm going to tell you, I had one of the best business managers in the state for over 10 years. And she's got the ability and the talent to be as good as it. So, I don't tell her, we get her on her game. But, yeah, you got a good one, keep it.
For all this work that you've done, next year's gonna be a good use, right?
That's what I said. I have one
It'll be
superintendent
easier.
and only one audit. I'm gonna be cool.
Yes,
And,
exactly.
No, not have one.
and when we were looking at this budget, we were really thinking about like, okay, how do we give the next superintendent both the tools to start the year? Right, and that's why the additional training and everything of the EAs in the summer, but also a budget that's got enough flexibility that if that new superintendent is working with the board to develop vision and that you need to do some things that, we couldn't think about today. This budget is flexible enough that can happen. So,
Hey, Brian,
huh?
I appreciate it, but I'd like to see the budget.
You got it right in front
Well,
of
I know, but I need her to go through it so I can understand the figures.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Budget time question. I'm kind of like to hear a little bit about where we are in terms of our union fund balance. We spent about $1.5 million into that reserve amount this year. What does that look like, not just next year, but in the next, we know our expenses are going up. We know our personnel expenses are going up. We We've got 2 negotiations with unions next,
Three.
three. I'm sure they're gonna ask for something. What is that gonna look like here? We have some sense of what that getting fund balance, because it has potential to go away like that.
Mhm.
And then we will be operating very differently. So I guess I just like to hear a little bit about.
So the intention with that is that we built in a safe estimate for beginning fund balance. When I run my software, it's looking at potentially a higher ending fund balance this year than 5 million. But in terms of budgeting, I wanted to make sure I didn't budget every single dollar that we had available. Knowing that budget numbers are rough, we budgeted 6.5 million this year, but it came in a little bit closer to 7. Knowing that if I budget 5, it may come in a little closer to 5.5 or 6. But it's really the finance perspective looking forward is how do we right size the district? How do we get our class sizes and our staffing levels to be appropriate with our declining enrollment, being really strategic as to when we have staff leave in terms of attrition. Also looking at capital projects. We have really spent a lot of money in the last couple of years investing in capital projects. We've renovated 2 schools, we've built 2 new schools, and some of that did come from our fund dollars. It didn't all come from the bond fund. So potentially less transfers to capital projects. Not doing that transfer until we know we do have enough funds in the budget to do that. And also being strategic when we have additional grant funds available. So this year we have a $5 million projected ending fund balance. Knowing that we have increased SIA funds and moving as many fund staffing as we can into SIA to allow us to build in a buffer for the next year. And also being realistic with our negotiations. We have 3 negotiations at once. There is not a pot of money for each specific group. We're going to really have to be critical as to if we increase COLA by X dollars, what does that look like in terms of as a loss for the district? What does that look like? And is that absorbing to staff to fund that? Is that?
Contracts have to start reflecting what real inflation is, rather than what had happened in 2002 or 22.
I have a quick question, talking about attrition and absorbing teachers, the 3 right,
Mhm.
that were absorbed, or what grade levels kind of, or are they like, grade school teachers?
They were
or like-
grade school, so they were
Okay.
K-6. 2 of them were K2, one at each Madison and Eastside. I don't know where the
Okay.
principals will choose to do that. I know that kinder enrollment is low, but they might want really low kinder numbers and be
Well,
willing.
that's fine. I was only curious because I've been on budget committees before, and then you find out one of the teachers that, is not getting replaced was a whole program or something
Well,
like that. So I wanted to make sure that, I figured you'd tell
The
us.
2 that are leaving, I believe it's a first grade at Madison. It's a kinder at Madison, and then I think a second or first grade at Eastside, and then a 3rd grade at Macomb.
Okay.
And that's a 3-6.
And if we want wicked, there's actually. We could absorb, if you just want to let it average, you could absorb another 3.
Mhm.
We didn't do that because you always have somebody leaving office.
Yes. Yeah.
So, we may get forced into absorbing somebody, but we sure in heck don't want to let go people.
Well, I was like, I just figured if, if we probably have a 3rd grade teacher, so, that's gonna be.
Yes. Okay, so Rob, you want to go page by page? Is that how you like
Hey,
to do
you-
that?
No, you're in charge.
Well, my chart is going to be a summary and then see if you guys have gone through. I can go page by page if you'd like me to. But if you have significant questions, I'm happy to address those first, but it is literally 206 pages.
Well, everyone was given this book.
Yes.
And rather than the overview, so I think it only fair, if somebody has a question, they've gone through your carefully.
That's
So
great.
if we just go page by page and see if anybody has any questions,
Sure. If
then
that,
we're good to go.
you're the chair, Rocky. You get to lead the show.
Uh,
Nobody wants me to lead it. Yeah.
1 minute.
It's left. Right.
So I do have a question, is I was looking at, looking through the long budget document at the payroll costs. Comparing this current year with projected for next year. Even when the salary costs are the same, it looks like all the associated payroll costs are reduced from this year to
Mhm.
next year, and just why is that?
Based on my calculation, it is because of, we pulled in the positions that are currently in the general fund when I built 23-24. And so those are purely calculated on, right, on actual numbers. Next year's are also at the same numbers, but in order to plug and fill to meet the objects, I was putting it in the 200 function, or the 200 objects, to make the functions balance.
It goes back to basically, since this year's budget didn't exist in the program, what shows for this year's adopted as far as object goes, which those are not particularly.
You can't. do
Right.
No,
Right.
I chose to buffer in the 200 objects because I knew that was easy place to identify them, rather than if I put 500,000 in supplies and materials. So the buffers that I did were primarily in the 200 funds, which is why they're ever inflated. The proposed budget for next year is all calculated off of next year's new salary schedules that have been built in the negotiations.
Okay, I just thought it was odd because you'd have identical numbers for the salary amount, but then the associated payroll.
Mhm.
Like hers isn't going down.
It is just significantly higher
That-
this year than it actually was in realistic costs.
Starting next year, you'll have your first actual comparison.
The adopted.
What you see right now is not real.
So don't compare.
Don't compare them
to-
to last year
You-
because they didn't exist last
They
year.
did not. I was only a genie so much.
Okay, well, I have a question
Yeah.
on Fund 11910 rentals.
Mhm.
2021, 86,000, 2022, 44,000. I'll ignore the $1,000 from last year.
Thank you.
But this year you're budgeting 250,000. I'm sorry, $5,000, way lower.
Way lower. So what that is when I was looking at the revenues that come in from our first student, that is the rentals from first student, they rent our bus workshop. I now am charging them to 1930, which is rental or lease payments from a private company. That's what it's cutting off. And so that line item is significantly higher. It went to 70,000. And so that's the difference.
Okay,
Any other questions on revenues? Okay.
revenue. Fund 100 is all revenue.
No, just the first page is revenue, and then it goes to the expenses for 500.
There's a lot of salary Fund 100. Unemployment, $100,000.
Yes.
Unemployment.
Let me speak to our lovely unemployment kerfuffle that we are in from the Department of Employment. They have now authorized that all of our 10-month classified staff are eligible for unemployment when they are off during the summer, even though they have a guarantee to return. This is new. But they also have no idea on how many they're going to approve and how many that's going to cost. The district also has some choices as to whether or not they would like to continue to self-pay, which is we pay for every single claim that we get, or if we'd like to enter a pool and have a assessed value, and we pay a certain rate for all payroll. So what we did is we included a significantly higher unemployment cost, assuming that we will have a significantly higher number of unemployment claims this summer if all of our educational assistants are eligible.
Some of that is really good, actually, because if you get the same people
Yeah.
back, because they weren't to take other jobs over the summer, then you continue with the trained staff and everything you put in there. I mean, you're gonna get your money back.
It is an interesting situation because we've always really relied on those classified staff to do additional work during summer because they're off. And so we offer them, we have painting at Millicoma that we can do.
They have to do it.
They don't have to do it this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, they do. If they're collecting unemployment, they do.
The unemployment department has agreed that this year they're essentially going to be rubber stamping
What?
all unemployment claims. So I have to assume that, yes, according
We
to our
actually
third
said
party
it.
administrator, they are rubber stamping, so they are allowed to turn down work, even if it's a bona fide offer, and with a intent to return. So what I have done is include a significantly higher amount of unemployment, assuming we'll have a significantly higher unemployment rate.
Nobody knows how this is gonna work.
No,
Yeah, okay, well, that's,
But that's across the board. So anyone, they, wow.
So this is obviously the first year that's being enacted, so you'll see this year I've included,
Was it based on a study?
I don't know, maybe, but I've included large chunks in our major functions that have most of our educational assistants. 1111 for elementary, 1121 for middle school, and 1131 function for high school, because that's where we have most of our staff. What you will see in the future is that I've spoken with some people at, some different groups throughout Oregon, and their recommendation is that we build a reserve fund for unemployment. So next year, in next year's budget, you'll see an unemployment reserve fund where we charge a certain rate to, just like we do for that PERS UAL bond, where we charge a certain percentage for all salaries. So what that would allow us to do is not pay every single unemployment claim out of the general fund, but to charge a certain rate to all staff, including grant funds, and build that reserve so that it's available when we have claims.
so these are hourly employees, and so there's no way to take their salary and spread it over 12 months. like
We already do.
We do, well, we do, there's a problem with that, but that's another issue. But,
But then how are they unemployed if they're getting a salary?
It is.
but again,
You
because
can ask them.
It's magic. It's magic.
they're technically not, they're not exactly, they're not exempt.
Yeah, I'm taking less money in September so that I have money through the summer.
It's just the way.
We were the only group that are not allowed to apply for unemployment, which during the pandemic came into play.
Oh, absolutely.
I had always worked, and I was told when it started, sorry, you won't be able to work this summer. And I'm like, but we weren't allowed to file for unemployment. Now, they did make an exception. Some people got it, some people didn't. In my case, Eli came up and said, wait a minute, I can hire you on benefits. I mean, I didn't want a lot.
Yeah.
It wasn't an amount I'd always counted on. Basically, it was just, why are we the only group?
Right.
That isn't, I mean, if we were Sodexo, if we were first student, we can apply.
Yes.
And it was more an equity issue. Now, I did not know what you just said.
About.
And to be honest, that also concerns me. I don't want this to be a negative thing. I think we do deserve to be able to file for unemployment.
Absolutely, I agree.
Because for some people don't want to.
Exactly.
And.
Or they have
They
child
don't
care
want to
issues during the summer.
apply. Some people, they do need to work. And right now, anybody can get a job anywhere, just about, but that's not always the case.
Right.
I am concerned about that statement.
I wouldn't say that to anybody.
But I'm saying it's too late, now I heard it.
And they communicate, the Department of Employment has.
Yeah, we didn't make it.
I did not make that up. It is in an email.
We'll be going there tomorrow.
So with that being said, the reason that it is broken out in the budget the way it is that administrators, even though they're not 12 months, are not eligible. And nor are teachers who are also working 10 months on a 10-month contract are not eligible for unemployment. If you spend more than 50% of your time instructing kids, you are not eligible for employment. So that's why I said educational assistants, because it's purely 10-month classified. It's not teachers, it's not administrators.
Then I have a question on the next line. How can you be so specific that it's 13,112.51
Boots percent.
for paid family medical leave?
It's a percentage.
Oh,
We pay would be 40% of 1% of staff. So it's a percentage based on the salaries.
This is the paid family leave, so.
okay.
Almost more like on
Which is, they've actually merged the two. So if you ever want to know what my real big proposal is here, it's been both those things. And the new one, employment department, whoever's running that now.
What is the total we do pay for paid leave? I mean, we pay half and the employee pays half.
We pay 40%.
We pay 40,
Mhm.
basically. So
Yeah.
what is that total, across the board?
A relatively minor amount. I think it was like 300,000 or something this year. But the amount of time that we are spending working on that, way higher.
And the problems with it.
And they're having the same no problems with the unemployment department because they've merged the two systems in, the software. Yeah, in Francis. So we're having the same issues. We can't, typically, our third party administrator would be filing and handling all the unemployment claims. It's Michelle. So she's got some good unemployment information, I bet.
And the changes too.
Yeah.
I think that's
I
pretty
was just
pretty-
gonna say, the changes to OFLA are gonna affect the paid leave Oregon significantly. I didn't know if I should talk or not, but, it will change paid leave Oregon significantly. And our contributions, because personal health crisis will no longer be covered under OFLA.
I know the rules are under paid leave are been more expansive. But I heard that it was gonna be more reflective of the paid leave standard, so. And I assume that percentage will be adjusted over time, right? This is the initial.
From what I understood is that the maximum percent is 1%. So it should not increase our rate, but I know that is a highly negotiated topic in upcoming contracts. Thank you, Michelle. Any other questions on this first page? Yeah.
I have a question about the ESAR, you know, the emergency federal funding.
Yes.
It's all zeroed out.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the COVID money?
That's the ESSER money. ESSER 1 and 2 are fully spent down. We're just ESSER 3 now. Yeah, yay. We're just on ESSER 3 now, and that's only good through September 30th. So that's why, 2 of the ESSER funds are zeroed out, and then 1 has $3 million budgeted in it. Because I just need some allocation in case that HVAC project takes way longer than it should.
Yes, that's all the code.
And then they will all be spent out by September
Like
30th.
September
This
30th.
year.
Whether I like it or not, it'll be gone.
It has to be.
Yeah, whether I like it or not, which is I don't like it. It's really helped a lot of districts.
So that one, in that sense, they had a built-in contingency. They haven't been using that.
No, they're not.
So will that still be there? I mean, we have to figure out how to spend that ahead of time.
We'll get a new roof for Sunset.
Potentially, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
It's the funds have no supplanting roles.
right, that's how it's,
Yeah, so if for some reason, you know, the roof comes in under budget $1 million, she can do a journal entry, reduce the general fund by $1 million, and then put that where you need it. So that's how you extend past September 30th. It's kind of funny because right now I do some consulting work with the Nevada Department of Education, and they're going through all these incredible, this work to try to figure out how to do an extended liquidation. Oregon Department of Education just called all the superintendents together and said, well, this is how you supplant, have it all gone by September 30th.
That's the biggest thing.
oh, I know.
Yeah, just
It'll be gone.
do it and get it off the books. So.
Mhm. Back to general fund. Does anyone have any other questions on general fund? Addie, let's hear it. I'm back. I'll let you lead the show.
Okay, function 1284, alternative programs online.
Yeah,
And what programs here?
it's not that person is just funded out of somewhere else.
Okay.
So what really happened is when I pulled in payroll for this year, they were originally coded to this fund 100-1284, but during this year we moved them. So they were in the function for the adopted budget, but they weren't realistically paid out of there. They were paid out of, I think, Fund 222, if I'm not on it, but
But
yeah,
it's just a different department speaking, or
Yeah.
different plan.
it's the same person. It's just paid out of a different grant.
So they didn't go away
No.
someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's one of my
Oh,
23,
I
24.
thought you had a good-
We do. We
This
do.
is a great problem to have. Thank you, Arnie.
Yeah.
You know, with SIA is because that is, you have to keep track of it entirely separately. but that's money that schools used to not have.
Mhm.
Right? And so it's, and with fund accounting, there's no way to say, hey, moved over here.
And, you didn't ask about 1283, and that's also zero. Bologna did close, so we,
The baloney's gone.
yeah,
Right.
exactly, that's why it's gone. Okay, well, that was gone for a reason on purpose, so.
Yeah, I figured that. Okay, so, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying Saturday.
What is youth corrections education? Because it looks like the last few years, 1 year we budget way high, then we go way low, then we go way high, and now we're back for one.
So what that is it's not actually corrections education. I don't know why the function is that. That's where we pay for our, transition program for, it's called the YTP grant. Currently, we pay for a portion of that out of here. Next year, the grant is going away, so the whole Southwest ESD, all the superintendents met and figured out how we were going to handle that. And I'm not sure where it ended up, other than that we're going to continue that service, but now we're responsible for paying for it. So that's why it increased.
So then it's gonna get better.
That is the hope.
Kids are in that.
So, yeah. And my sister is in there.
Actually, it's pretty good at hardship, you know,
We've got a
compared,
good person.
Mhm. And we are intending to keep that same person, as far as I know. That was part of the discussion was, oh, they're an ESD employee, how does that work? Do we go through a consortium? Do we build a consortium? So it was kind of one of those last minute, we had to figure it out. So I put in the budget, we can choose to do either. I don't know what the superintendents had chosen.
we have chosen to stick with the ESD for, mostly because we want to keep a regional perspective. And Coos Bay is one of the bigger districts in the region. And if we pulled out, it would be a situation where a couple of small districts would probably lose service. And look, they're all our kids, right? So, so we decided to stay in the consortium. We did squeeze the ESD pretty hard, make sure that they didn't, we weren't, you know, we gave them half of what they wanted for administrative program. But, yeah, all the people are staying employed and all the same people are returning to the same positions. And hopefully, YTP, what they moved to, it used to be that they would just, if you put up a matching third, they put up 2/3 for the program. And it was a great deal for the districts because realistically, YTP's mission is to only deal with the kids that are eligible for disability services. And so like the grant might be written for 10 people. And then, but we are responsible for providing transition services for all special ed kids. Well, we have been piggybacking, and I say we, I'm talking about everybody in Oregon, has been piggybacking on the YTP program to provide those services for all kids, of which we were always responsible. The federal government looked at how Oregon was doing it, they saw that it was being misused, and they said, okay, forget the way you're doing the grant now, just bill us for the time that you spend with our 10 kids. And most districts that I know of right now are walking. And we'll see how that works, but this region is going to continue having the services for it.
Adding to this question answered? You have more.
You're proud, okay.
Let's hear it.
Awesome.
Okay. Section 2122,
Mhm.
counseling,
On.
God.
Yeah.
That's another one of those lovely tricks. All of our counselors are currently funded out of SIA. They absorbed 2 more into SIA in this grant, so they were funded out of general fund when I pulled in the positions, but they're being paid for out of SIA, our County 224. Those are our actual staff, and then we also pay for counseling services through Coos Health and Wellness, and that comes out of, I think, Measure 98, but if not SIA, one of those 2. So that is why it is not going away. We just moved that.
So it's completely, largely, everything stayed the same.
Correct. The only changes to the actual budget in terms of staffing are the ones that I already addressed in the
3 staff.
Yeah, I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't cut any programs.
no counselors that are cut, there's just moved to different funding
This-
districts.
This year, and I'll be very transparent, this year is,
That was big progress,
yeah,
it's campsite.
Well, that's, I mean, it's good to know. It just looks funny when you look on the budget, and all of a sudden, civilians are, counseling services. just
yeah.
Zero now.
This is a hard year in terms of building a budget because we have had 3 superintendents this year. But you guys also made a decision the day before I had to print a budget as to who the next superintendent would be. Which is totally great, but it didn't allow for any time to work with that superintendent incoming to build a program. But I haven't been here longer than July and Brian's not here long term, so we did not feel confident or comfortable to make any long lasting decisions that the next superintendent would be stuck with. So I tried to keep everything as consistent as possible, as much as finances would allow. And we're realistic, right? It's Dr. Ainsworth, when he gets here, he might have a completely different plan, and I didn't want to set up a budget where he then was pigeonholed and I could cut a program. So I tried to keep things as consistent as possible.
Good. Can I ask a different question? I know a little bit, I'll just give you a break also.
I'm done.
I'm curious where our first rate came in, where it's likely to come in.
It is likely to stay very consistent for the next year is what they're expecting. Moving forward, they are not so sure. There's not been a significant increase, but it has stayed stable according to Piper Sandler and our PERS people. They work some magic for PERS that I cannot understand. I just am told a rate. So it has stayed very consistent for this year, and we are hoping that it stays consistent, but I'm expecting it to go up. Another reserve fund that I'd like to consider building is a PERS reserve fund, where we can take a tiny percentage of each staff member, code it to all of our staff, because then I can charge it to some grants and build a reserve fund for when that rate does increase significantly, and offset that. So I'm not,
We know what the rate is, Tier 1 or Tier 2, is it 20-some?
I think it was like 21.86 last time I did a PERS reconciliation.
Well, yeah, we're also critically, they're also having to fund.
Right.
grant groups as well.
Mhm.
That's the unfunded, like,
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like it's such a drag on us that so much of our
Yeah.
salaries
It is.
are just eaten away by that. No real benefits or direct benefits to the schools.
Mhm.
So I just hope at some point, maybe we come to a better breathing point. I just haven't seen one in the forecast of it.
I have not heard of one. I meet with Piper Sandler. They're going to be by June 4th, I believe. And they're coming to meet with me so we can talk about that first rate, because I want to know kind of their calculation and how they project us to extend it.
It actually starts turning around about 28.
Okay, well, we got some time.
It actually starts going down.
Let's hope that by then the PERS UAL bond is done and that.
That helps.
And if it goes away before then, maybe we use that same percentage, build a reserve fund for,
I've not seen the calculations. Of it, sure.
I have not, but I would like
I
that
mean, I
too.
think we're still at about under 80% funded. So, and the folks that are contributing to the unfunded portion are small,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because they're all on tier 3. And so those folks have been exempt. And so,
13%, the latter, when I retired, 13%, because I was tier 3, 13% of my salary went to the unfunded portion of PERS, of which I received no benefit for, and the district received no benefit.
Are you tier 1?
I appreciate all of you.
You do.
That's why I have a 1-bedroom condo.
Should we keep going?
So what about, what about the regular, our insurance costs? Have they gone up significantly this year?
They're expected to be about 5% higher.
That's not as bad as that.
No, not as bad. So I'm gonna hope that that 5% is accurate. I haven't got a renewal packet yet, so. We'll see, but I anticipated about a 5 to 10% increase. It was already anticipated for last year, so that percentage of increase last year was pretty high, so I got it to more than accurate. expectation for next year.
Isn't always required to try to maintain a 3.2%?
Oh, I think he's talking about our liability insurance.
Oh, I mean, well, we should look at both of those, though. The other one is,
Health insurance,
Yeah.
that's very stable. And also negotiated with our group, so for classified staff, and I believe administrative staff, it only went up $25 a month.
Yeah.
For the district cost. And I think maybe 50 for teachers, maybe. Don't quote me, that was rather about. I put it all into the system in iVisions and it calculates it all for me. Okay, 21-26, was that or 21-22, that was our last question. Okay, other questions? I'll keep going through the general fund. It's the best time. If I keep looking faster, nobody's gonna have any questions. Did anyone else have any questions on the 100 funds, or do you want me to skip to the special revenues? Okay, skip. If Addie doesn't have any questions, so that means let's skip. So special revenues, these you will not see as great of a detail, because there are so many funds. I think we have about 80. You guys don't really care probably for the object detail in student body accounts. But what I have given you is a resources and then a revenue for each fund, so you can see that they do in fact balance. These are rather hard to budget for because we submit for all of our grants. We submit budgets to the granting agency. They have to get approved, and then what I essentially do is do a budget adjustment and build the budget that's in the system to match the grant narrative that we've submitted. So I know that when we are doing expenses throughout the year, it actually agrees to the grant narrative rather than just the total allocation. So I just budget the authority to spend all of that money in the similar functions that we have in the past, knowing that then I got some wiggle room to readjust as those grants are approved.
In other words, this is an area where the opponent to it, the budget committee approves at the function level. Some of it's yet to be approved.
Correct. So we start with the student body funds. I know there were some questions as to why some schools might have higher student body funds than others. That is a really tricky subject because each school has the freedom and ability to fundraise on their own, and they often fundraise for their own projects. They also have different school fees potentially. They also, I know that Sunset requires staff to contribute to a sunshine fund, not all schools do. And so some schools might have spent, I know Madison spent some money 2 years ago when they moved in, that some other districts or other schools have not because they haven't moved in the last 2 years. So while there might look like some disparity between schools, that is not the district doing that. That is purely the funds that are held at the schools. Fundraising, individual grants for the schools, that's all to them. I don't manage that.
So where do the Harding student body funds go? Is that the Alted program?
Yeah, that's definition. I don't figure out also how to change all of the fund labels every single area, because like I did it, you'll notice in 247, I changed the resources to be early literacy grid. The revenues, social available for use, that's the fund title. Apparently not changed in multiple places, so. We'll change Harding to destination.
Harding to be in with it forever.
It'll be haunting us for a long, long time.
Underneath.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So as we keep going, we do not have any fiscal education K-8 grants at this time. If we do get some grants, we will apply for them mid-year. We can always do an adjustment with the allocation, but right now we didn't have any of those grants this year and we don't intend to have any next year.
Where's the first one?
It's 200.
Okay.
The very beginning. It's a very long one.
Did you take the physical education?
Yes, there,
That was a mandated program.
it is, but there's a special grant that you can apply for, that allows you to add supplemental PE teachers. And we just didn't apply for that this year because we didn't utilize it all the year before. We just paid them out of the general fund.
So, but we are going to have eventually physical education taught
We do.
rather than by the teachers that are teaching the classroom.
No, we have PE teachers. We have qualified PE teachers at each building. They're just not paid for as a special grant. We pay for them out of the general fund.
Okay, that's always been a pet peeve of mine, because when I was in the military, most of the time that I had to deal with kids who were getting out of high school, they couldn't run them on because they were too fat and lazy. So, you know, I think that it's very important, especially in the learning environment.
So we have a state requirement now for hours and minutes for PE.
Yeah,
That's a change.
Yeah, and we do. We have specialized PE teachers. Dan Neal, I think he used to teach a swap or to coach something. He's our PE teacher at Eastside. He retired and then gymnastics, I knew it was something. And he retired, but he came back because he wanted to teach the little kids at Eastside. So he's a K2 PE teacher. We have qualified PE teachers at each school. And at the very lower levels, we have PE assistants so that they can operate 2 classes at once, or they can have extra bodies on hand. So
good organized PE can actually stimulate the learning. So it's good for like in the classroom as well, not just the physical being of the kid.
right.
I will say that as a high school principal, this is where I got in the most trouble for.
To invite them? Yeah, Eli,
Not that we raise too much money every year, and so every audit,
oh.
we had budgeted enough for the money we spent, so they would all be upset with us. And
Well,
we're gonna have this new car that they're gonna be selling, and it could turn out to be a whole lot of extra money.
This year,
may end up doing a supplemental budget.
Yeah.
this year, we're expecting maybe 35,000 in contributions if we can sell all of our tickets. As a district, Kisco Toyota gave the 2 districts a car that we're gonna be raffling off. So our high school is able to sell 3,500 tickets, and so is North Bend. So we have the opportunity to raise $35,000. The benefit to that is all of that money goes directly to the cause for selling. So if the cheer people want new uniforms, they are welcome to sell their ticket, and that money goes directly into their student body.
So coming from this last week, I was with my sisters on schoolwork. They do a Toyota sales, it's up to 160,000 a year now. So just so, you know, they could end up selling a lot of tickets. Nobody gets behind it.
Our goal is, I hope people see how beneficial it is. At the football game in November, they'll be raffling off the car, and then they'll also be announcing the car for the next year. So then the students will have a full year to raffle off their tickets, and hopefully we can like double the ticket amounts because we'll have a full year to do it.
Anyone can win the car between us and North Bend.
North Bend. So we're working with North Bend to get those tickets going, hopefully rather soon.
Yeah, and it's a totally paid car. He's picking up the fees, the taxes.
Yes,
The other half is just not fair.
yeah, but conveniently,
I didn't see that. one.
no. I was blocked by,
He says if you're going towards North Bend, you see the North Bend side. If you're coming towards Coos Bay, you see the Coos Bay side.
yeah, and they'll be doing it every year. That is their intention, with a different car every year. So we'll see.
I have to take that up. Rocks will be rather nice.
I get back on the budget.
Yeah, sorry, let's go.
Everybody rock people.
Hey, please do. And more questions on general,
So, can you talk a little about the 209 preschool promise? So they're gonna grant $950,000.
Yeah, so the preschool promise grant is we get a certain amount per student for preschool promise slots that we have available. The district has 4 classrooms at the end of the hall. 3 of them are preschool promise. Well, I say 3. We have 54 slots that are preschool promise, and we have 18 that are paid slots. We charge $300 for tuition per student per month. But this preschool promise is just for the 54 students that we have, that we continue to fill.
So the total budget is actually more for that program.
Correct. And so with that, we can only fund 3 teachers and 6 EAs because we theoretically only have enough preschool promise slots for 3 classrooms. So we have 1 teacher that's funded out of the general fund, one EA that's funded out of the general fund, and then we have one EA who's paid for by that tuition. Mhm. And that just increases, the amount per student just keeps increasing every year.
And there's more slots, so we don't have this space for the teachers.
And the hope is that we can figure out how to add more space for more preschool trauma slots if there is such a need.
And part of like moving Carly,
That is the goal, yep. And that's where Carly, or 0.5 would be funded, is up to on that.
And then the Marshfield Scholarship Fund,
Mhm.
this has always been in the budget, right?
Yes.
But we're gonna be taking over some of the administrative management function for it, is that correct?
Of the,
For the scholarship.
we hope that to happen. We aren't doing it now.
No.
That's the other committee type. Less involved, but those people are going to die. We talked about it, you know, that's. That's what it says.
Less is one. And so with that, they're trying to pot it
You
up.
can keep me around for a long time, but there will be a time. And you had better learn how to take care of it.
And
So
so,
he's trying to transition that back to the district one.
uh,
Theoretically, we can use some of the money that's in the fund to pay for the administration. So it won't cost the district anything. But because there's now over $7 million. in that fund.
It's not advertised as well as it should be. There's a lot of kids that might be able to use this and don't know about it.
Well, at school, they have a person who's dedicated, who spends a lot of time making sure everybody should know about it. So maybe parents don't know. But every kid at the high school.
That's a lot of money in there.
$400,000
$400,000
next week,
next week, we're getting.
next Wednesday, $400,000 to be given away.
Feeling there are many things given was told about.
Given away. No,
So they're not paying back their.
no, there's two different funds at the high school level.
Right.
The one you don't see in here, I don't think, is the student loan.
Oh, that's scholarship.
I don't.
This is the scholarship fund. And that's one of the $7 million, we only take some money from the Oregon Community Foundation that we give away to students as scholarships.
Okay, gotcha.
Her daughter, this is scholarships, now she's graduating from U of O, just a few weeks.
Yeah.
Bachelor's.
That's great.
400,000 next week
Yeah.
to 62 kids.
Yeah.
That's how many apply. And you don't have to have, if you apply, you will get a scholarship. Now, the student loan one, that is not advertised very well.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on that committee
And the
too.
scholarship too is for trades too. not-
1.5 million is dedicated only to, vocational students.
Yes, no, that's.
So we give over 150,000.
Yeah.
Good.
Now back to the budget. Does anyone have any questions on special revenue?
We have 32 minutes.
Full confession, is that today is my wedding anniversary and I forgot and I accidentally planned a budget committee meeting with it. That's why you follow what I call. That's why I know I'm the last couple I'm gonna be in. Yeah, I'm not the favorite wife this year. So any other questions on special revenue fund? I did forget, but what's that?
Oh, moving on to the next one. I'll help you.
Thank you. Okay, and all of these, essentially the allocations in here are purely the grant allocations. These numbers all come from preliminary allocations, because that's all that we get by the time.
The one thing that worries me is we're adding a lot of staff that are grant funded. It's just as our revenues go down, because our student body goes down, I'm worried about the ability to then continue those programs when the grant funds go away.
Depends on the grant.
Yeah.
So SIA is a grant. It's not going away.
It's all.
Every business is paying their taxes and the money in it has only grown. So that's not one that we have to apply for or whatever. It just comes to us. And that's where most of the staff are coming out.
Most of them are coming to SIA and high school success, which is also.
Not going
Not
on.
going away.
And, the other is Title I, which is also not going away. Our allocation may change, but,
So we
those
don't,
three are not going away.
we don't have a lot of grants to do a lot of our individual things.
No.
To pay people.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay
Oh,
out
that-
something if you're not sure.
It is not sustainable. We should-
If you're watching what's going on in Salem and the
Yeah.
rest of the state, they put all their ESSER funds into people,
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was.
And now
they
that
have
money's
no
gone.
ESSER funds.
because that
So
was-
they're having reductions from 40 and
400.
Oh, 400.
400 people.
400 people.
Mhm.
Because that's,
Yeah.
that's money you knew was gonna end, and yet you hired staff, that's not a good idea.
Smart districts did what you guys did. You plan it out and you go through any fund balance.
Harris said that every meeting. He's still going every meeting.
Yeah.
This is-
She,
So
they,
you're- it
they were
is
very
really impressive,
mhm. Yeah.
but it depends on what kind of grant.
Yeah, well, and that's free.
Mhm. Were there other questions on 200 funds? Anybody have a grant they want to talk about in depth?
Can you tell us a little bit about 227? What that is? So like,
Yep, and I might have to remind myself of what it is.
the TAP grant.
TAP grant. It also grants that we get that are specifically geared towards, native and tribal populations. So we pay for attendance advocates for that program, and then it's supplies that we can use to support those students.
And that's increased over the front too.
And typically continues to increase every biennium.
And that's a federal grant.
What's that?
Brady told us 22%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. And the reason it increased so significantly in this budget is because we'll have a carryover at June 30th that I wanted us to have an application to spend next year. Just as a highlight, Fund 228, and there's another fund, but I can't tell you the number, is the summer learning grants. And we did finally get notice that we had been on a waiting list to apply for summer learning grants. We were given the AOK to apply. That's been done, and we are moving forward with summer learning. So we will have really strong summer programs at all of our schools, or for all of our schools. I don't know, Millicoma is uncertain of where they'll be because of the move. So we're doing at least 80 instructional hours. We're really focused on supporting the needs of the students. We're going to have free lunch again for the students and for everyone. It'll offer free breakfast to the students who are enrolled in student summer programs.
That include the Kickstart kindergarten program.
I don't know about that, but I don't think so, but this is purely K-12. We're really gonna be heavy on summer learning.
And I would expect that will continue. That's, the legislature went heavy into that.
Mhm.
Now, and we offer, this year, we're not only offering remediation, we're offering enrichment programs also.
I don't know that it is enrichment. I think there might be some qualifications in the grant, but we are trying to make it as enticing as possible.
It's actually heavier academic than it has been, and that's conditions of the legislature usually.
Mhm.
So not as much enrichment as in the past.
Not as much as that fun year where everybody got like hundreds of thousands of dollars and like,
After they did another.
yeah, and like in North Bend, they were doing like Star Wars build lightsaber camps. Not that this year, but we're hoping to get some good attendance. I know. It was science somehow. Any other special revenue fund questions? Hey, you guys are a lively bunch at 7:30. I thought popcorn would help. Debt service funds. This is really straight to the point. This 300 debt service, that's our first UAL bond. We bill a percentage for all of our employees, and then I move it over and I pay the debt service. And then 302, that is our bond fund that we are paying down. So I've allocated this to be able to spend the debt service schedule payment, and that's it. Nothing except. Any other questions in debt service funds?
The bond repayments for how long?
Like 28 more years.
Is that what it is?
30.
Is it 30 years?
28 more years?
Yeah,
I thought it was 20 payoff, but it's 30 payoff or something.
I thought it was 20 as I was reviewing that with the auditors the other day, but I can double check.
It's- I look at my taxes. I would-
Yeah,
And you're thinking, how soon will this go away?
yeah.
I started.
Yeah, you know, problem that Rocky is the minute it goes away, there's another one.
Maybe sooner.
Marsh Field has to get that in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah, and that is, we did a long
That's
range
$1 million.
facility
It's gonna be $1 million bucks.
at
Oh.
least. They're, so in full transparency, we did a smart assessment grant to try and look at renovating HVAC and roof at, the high school. And it was approximately 18 million for all of the needs. When somebody came in and assessed it, it will likely to be a bond in and of itself.
Oh, just tearing down the high school and rebuilding.
That was just fixing.
The thing of it is, you can't do that because there's too much historical with it. So you
Exactly.
almost gotta keep the facade and build behind it and.
And there's not room to do that either. So it'll be a very interesting time for the district. Where do you put those kids? What something's being built or something's being renovated? We'll look at that.
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
That's enough.
But
You got 20 minutes.
You're throwing good money after that.
We're working on a grant to allow us to start updating HVAC shortly. Or capital projects. We can get into that. Capital projects maintenance, the 450 fund. We spent a lot of money working on all these renovations, so I've been really bare bones with the projection of what we'll have in that fund, knowing that if we go over bond funds, we're gonna have to absorb it out of here. And with our long-range facilities planning, we built a 5-year tier of projects we want to do in the next 5 years. My hope is that I'm allowing us to do for allocation about one large-scale project a year, whether that be the sunset roof or there was talk about a CTE upgrade. I can't remember all the tier ones, but yeah, there's some large chunks of projects, and so we're going to work on doing those each year out of this fund.
How's the stadium?
Oh,
Okay. It was in bad shape a while back, but.
I have- That was not
The
one,
whole stadium's fine.
Yeah.
that's not one that people have been complaining to me about, so
Yeah.
we'll have to Brian next time we see him.
Right.
On to athletic projects, you'll see the increase in the transfer, that's to build that bleacher reserve. Also in case we need to do some large scale projects like $25,000 for a water meter at the South Stadium, which we have to bill for today, or, the softball field needs some renovations after we built this big new building. Those will all come out of the athletic reserve or athletic projects.
Are we already starting to plug back into the turf for the next time?
Yes. Mhm. South Stadium, they're nearly done with that project, but I hear they've been nearly done for a couple of years, but I left some money in the budget so that if they're still working on that, they can keep working on the South Stadium. We're not contributing any more to that because we did our contribution this year. So the rest are all donations. Seismic upgrade at Madison, that's done. Millicoma, done. The Oregon Department of Energy Cool School Program, we get a certain percentage of our, well, I can't even estimate what it is. We get a transfer and a deposit every single month for about $8,000 from Pacific Power. As some sort of rebate, it goes into this fund, and we are holding on to it until we can do some large scale lighting or energy upgrade.
So we don't know why we get it, but we are.
It's a little surcharge on your,
Really?
on your.
It goes to schools? That's awesome.
And there is talk right now, so our LED, or our lights are not LED, you can no longer buy. So we had to stockpile and buy a bunch of them this year, but the reality is we will not be able to continue to get those. And so this funding is really great for when,
Changing lighting.
right. Because that is
That's
something
been
that
pretty
we're-
strict on what they allow on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, we've had a lot of
Yeah,
lighting.
all the down lights and the colors that you can have now, lighting is really.
Mhm. Exactly. The geo bonds, there's not really that much money left in it, but I want to leave some money in case we get a contingency back, because we have an owner's contingency in this fund as well with our current project. If we get any money back, we want to have the ability and the authority to spend it. So I put 150,000 in there. And then turf reserve, you'll see the transfer from other funds. That's $80,000. And we're working on building up that turf reserve back up for when we inevitably need to replace it in 10 years. Hopefully. 10 years. Crown Point Construction, we sold some money or some property 2 years ago. The money just got set aside for, I believe, the beautiful new preschool ground equipment is out there. So we spent it. If you get a chance to look at your school gym, we'll need to continue work on that, but we don't have any more funding out of there. And that is the budget in detail.
I want to say this last section
Yeah.
that you included is really helpful.
Good. That was
This
good.
was a really good thing to put in.
Good. I'm glad. This is what goes on in my brain when I'm like, oh, function. I think about it's all here, and that way, if I started babbling about the stuff I think about, you guys could just refer to it. And you know, she's not crazy.
It will be nice next year to be able to 2 years together.
I agree.
Really helpful to be able to say, oh, yeah. I think it happens. FTEs went up or down, whatever.
Yeah, it was. No, and that was part of the challenge I had in building it is, well, I built the one before with the best information I had available, but, I'm really excited for next year's budget. Maybe it'll even be more in depth than this if Brian gets us.
Does anyone have any other questions on the budget? Anything we've gone over so far tonight that was relevant to the budget? Okay, does anyone want to make a motion? And if you do make a motion, I would request that you read the recommended motion at the bottom.
Please.
So it doesn't have to be done twice.
We are skipping public comment.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have any assignment.
No, public comment. And anybody out there in TV land?
I would say for the first time in my over 20-year career, I'd like to thank Marina for giving me a library budget. And
You're up here dancing. Great.
this is a fun way to do my last, library.
Yeah, good.
Happy for you, Carrie.
What?
For this year. I have 1 year.
Any other public comments?
I don't know what the Crown Point preschool construction is.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was the last one. That we sold some property out on Crown Point.
We didn't even know we had it.
No, and they sold it for 60,000. They set it aside so that we could build the new playground equipment that's out in this back.
So Crown Point is, if you have to go out for this old dump that's out there, keep going up to Crown Point area.
Oh, is that right?
And we own part of that.
We did, we had a lot,
Yeah.
it was hardly buildable, but
We still own, or do we still own the property right behind Walmart?
We do,
Yes.
and we're actually clearing it right now. We're working on clearing it from all
Getting
the
all the
brush.
rentals out of there?
Correct. That's.
Yeah,
been
we're gonna
happening
shut down all the
quickly.
trees, so there's no place to.
It's a nice corner lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we put the money aside for preschool playground equipment and we put that in over last summer.
The only other thing, is there a resource officer present at any of the grade schools?
We have one SRO for the district, Rob Stovall. I don't know where he spends his time.
He's in Marshall mostly, but he has definitely been known to dip down.
It's here.
When he-
all
when
the
he's
stories,
called.
but it's
Yeah, he's been
Well-
spending a lot of time at Somerset.
The conver-
it's teacher.
the conversation that,
Should we budget to have one day school?
Yeah,
I don't think.
the conversation that we started with adding the VPs and having, building those systems, that's to address that. Well, it'll be more effective than an SRO.
SRO really can't do anything
I know.
unless the person breaks the law and they can arrest them.
So I'm saying with the presence, you know,
The presence
that
can
is, I just didn't know how much Rob
Yeah.
is.
Sometimes
budgeted.
it's just great.
Ever seen
And
it.
it- should the city pay that?
We said-
This guy's actually pretty.
And that's part of the discussion around those VPs is the priority to admin in the buildings is that they want to be able to really focus on instructional teaching and really helping their teachers, but they can't do that if they're dealing with behaviors. So they want somebody in their building who can actually be one-on-one with the kids that are having those frequent behaviors, that can address them consistently, so that then the principals are freed up to actually lead in instructional quality. And hopefully we can see a huge ton of benefit from that as well on the behavior end. So it was twofold. It was really, hopefully beneficial next year.
Counseling staff.
Michelle's raised her hand.
Hey, I just wanted to mention that, I just didn't want it to be a surprise that if the K2 schools and the 3-6 schools, we've posted, I hear what you're saying about administrative support. But we also have posted for deans of students, in some of the schools. So if you see next year that we don't have full administrators in one of those buildings, they're still making those decisions if we hire somebody who's a licensed administrator or a dean of students. So they will have additional behavior support and support to the building principal, but it may not look the same in every building with administrative licensed support.
Thank you. That,
It comes down to people.
yeah.
Getting the right people.
It gives the principals in the building the chance to either hire a TOSA as a dean of students, that they have somebody in office, like in their building already, who can be really great at that role. Or a licensed administrator, whatever they feel they need. I know Sunset felt they want a licensed administrator, but Carly, but Kayla.
Yeah.
They might
Nothing's been just.
just see the
Just provide.
Yeah, yeah, and so you'll see both of those postings. We're not hiring one of each at each school. We just wanted the freedom to hire from the pool.
What the best option?
Yep,
Makes sense.
exactly.
So that's the white man.
Mhm.
Okay, any other public comment? Last item.
Except, we haven't gotten a motion yet. have we?
No, we're still on, we've got to remind me that I didn't do the public. So we're to that point, if there's no other public comment, of making a motion.
I would move that we approve the 2024 to 2025 budget as follows. The general fund, $45,317,851. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Federal revenue fund, $25,572,173.03. Debt service fund, $5,186,319. Capital projects fund, $3,730,067, for a total of $79,751,410.03. And then, B also, yeah,
Mhm.
okay, and then B, that we're going to, so approve the tax rate of 4.5276 per 1,000 of assessed value to be assessed in support of the general fund, and $3,966,583 for the general obligation bond levy in the debt service fund for principal and interest.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we're done.
Thank you. Don't struggle with it. I think 4, but I don't know. Again, there's a 2-year-old, and he literally just started sleeping in my bed this week. The 2-year-old, he's never slept in bed with us, and this week he decided, I'm sleeping with mom. Because not because he horizontal.